President Biden says negotiators are closing in on a possible ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Mediators are working with both sides separately in Qatar. Israel says there is no chance of a ceasefire without the release of the hostages in Gaza. And last night, President Biden put a timeline on the potential deal.
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab is in Tel Aviv. Imtiaz, how are the Israelis reacting to President Biden's statement there that this could be done by Monday?
Well, Nancy, they're not saying very much, which is surprising. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, not known to keep his thoughts to himself, but he hasn't reacted to this, at least not publicly. We haven't heard from any senior members of his cabinet either. We have, however, heard from an Israeli government spokesperson who said that Israel is ready when Hamas is ready, but she went on to say that Hamas was on another planet in terms of some of their demands that they wanted. Whatever the case, we've also reached out to Hamas to ask them what they thought of the potential of a deal coming very quickly, including some of the contours of the deal as well. They're saying they don't really know either, saying not very much either. Now, it's not surprising, Nancy, that both Israel and Hamas are playing their cards close to their chest. You'll remember in November, we saw a ceasefire agreement which saw a hostage release, those dramatic photos, those prisoner releases as well in the West Bank. And so this is very sensitive, very delicate, and there are talks ongoing. Is for certain, but again, very, very muted response here in Israel to the president's remarks.
Given that, should this actually go through, what would it look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the real spine of this deal is simply this. For a 6-week ceasefire, which effectively just means a halt in violence, it doesn't mean the violence will end altogether, because Israel says it is committed to carrying out that campaign in Rafah in the south of Gaza. But it would be a 6-week ceasefire, which would see the release of up to 40 hostages being held inside Gaza. That includes women, potentially children, the elderly, and those who are very ill. It would also see desperately needed aid going into Gaza, where humanitarian organizations are saying is on the brink of famine, if not in full famine in some parts of that area. But in terms of how that's going to work, what mechanisms are going to be in place, and more importantly, what are some of the more broader parameters of that deal in terms of Palestinian prisoner release, who those Palestinian prisoners will be, that doesn't seem to be entirely figured out. And that is why those negotiations are still ongoing. Still, here in Israel, there does seem to be an alignment, if you will, with the Biden administration in terms of perspective. It would seem here that in Israel that this deadline that the Biden administration has, which is to try to get some deal in place, some ceasefire in place ahead of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, is something that has really sort of permeated the kind of momentum here in Israel, not least because hostage families want their loved ones released, but that this seems to be the moment for a deal to happen. Nancy.
Imtiaz Tyab, thank you very much.